Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Please forgive my voice this week. I'm a little under the weather, but the show must go on. Anyway, if this is your first visit, please subscribe and click notification to get my weekly uploads of which screen adaptation of which book I'll be covering, and I also take requests. This week it is Firestarter, written once in 1980 and brought to screen 3 times. The first movie done in 1984, amazing. A close match from book to movie with a few omissions and watering down we'll get to in a minute. The Sci-Fi Channel tried a miniseries of Firestarter in 2002 with an older Charlie McGee and John Rainbird as her sidekick, completely forgetting that she killed him in the book and the original movie. But I digress, since it only lasted 2 episodes. Then there is an updated movie in theaters right now that I'm not hearing or reading anything stellar about. Its best user rating on IMDb is 5 out of 10, and most online reviews and video reviews share the same sentiment. It's boring, and they're not getting that hour and a half back. So I didn't take my family to go see it, especially after finding out about a very unfortunate cat. My 9-year-old son has seen some of the Terminator, Alien, and Predator movies, so he knows that the violence is fake and takes it with a grain of salt. So we all watched the 1984 Firestarter together, and he thought the little girl around his age making fireballs and blowing up government buildings is the coolest thing since Optimus Prime. And he also pointed out the moments where the special effects just missed the mark. Anyway, in the original, it starts off where the book starts off. Andy and Charlie are on the run with just the clothes on their back. There's a few flashbacks woven into their adventure to describe who they are and where their abilities come from. The book details the science behind the Lot 6 experiment and how an injection of this chemical into the pituitary gland can cultivate these supernatural abilities coming directly from the minds of the subjects, namely just Andy and Vicky, since everyone else either lost their minds completely and permanently, if they lived, and how these abilities were genetically passed down to Charlie. A few flashbacks missing from this movie, but were included in the remake, include some mysterious small fires that popped up when Andy would feel the tiniest heat wave rise up off of baby Charlie, one of which was so close that she went temporarily bald, and compelled Andy and Vicky to stock up on fire extinguishers and get them noticed by the shadow government group called the Shop, who experimented on them in the first place. There's also a missing memory of when Andy had to practice a little tough love on Charlie to get her to be more serious in controlling her pyrokinesis. She's a toddler, and she trips over her teddy bear. This makes her mad, and her anger lights up the teddy bear. Andy puts out that fire and then presents Charlie with the damage done, putting her damaged teddy bear right in her face and telling her she has to control her ability before she wounds a person similarly, which she does a couple of times that are included in the movie. The mishap with the oven mitts over bedtime, and setting the jerk's feet on fire when his verbal abuse of his pregnant girlfriend really pissed her off. So, away they go, with Andy using his nosebleed Jedi mind trick to escape. They have a brief and uneventful stay at a roadside hotel, and then make their way to the Manders farm where the Shop catches up with them. Now, what happens here is considerably watered down from book to movie. As the Shop agents close in and they wound Irv Manders, Charlie lets the dog off the leash and starts cooking. The book describes how the fires start on their faces, and her fires burn so hot that the flesh melts and like tallow within seconds. 3 of the Mander's chickens on the farm catch fire and are burned to piles of ash. And part of the Mander's farmhouse catches fire. And Norma Manders is considerably and understandably more upset about her front yard turning into a war zone, but Irv is equally as forgiving and sympathetic and gives them his jeep so they can continue their escape. They make it to their cottage on the lake, but because they just have the clothes they left in, and they don't seem to get dirty at all in the movie, it seems like this whole sequence of events happens in just under a day. In the book, Andy and Charlie stay at the cottage for months, throughout the entire winter, before the shop's hitman, John Rainbird, tracks them down and captures them. Now about John Rainbird, he too is watered down from book to movie. He is a Vietnam vet and shadow government hitman. He is missing an eye and has facial scarring that makes him hard to look at. He has an unexplained interest in collecting shoes, and an unspoken axe to grind with the government for getting nothing in return for his service and sacrifice in Vietnam. So, he'll track down Andy and Charlie for the shop, but he has motives of his own. He is leaving the shop to go off and be an obscure supervillain, with Charlie as his trusty sidekick. When Andy and Charlie are in captivity and have been separated, they keep Andy completely subdued on Thorazine, so he won't use his extreme power of suggestion on them. And speaking of Andy's power, it gives him severe headaches, which are illustrated in this movie as nosebleeds, and in the remake as eye bleeds. The book and movie come back together when Rainbird approaches Charlie, disguised as a harmless orderly. He gains her trust, and in exchange for some time outside, some horseback rides, and a promise to see Andy, lets them study her. One of the shop doctors, a Dr. Pinchot, lets his guard down with Andy, and that's when Andy finds out that the shop means to kill them both. And Dr. Pinchot's death is completely different from book to movie. In the movie, he's blown sky high when Charlie launches a fireball from her mind into the golf cart he's driving. In the book, he goes home. He puts on his wife's lacy underthings, because he's a secret cross-dresser, and then goes into the kitchen, turns on the garbage disposal, and plunges his arm in at least, past the wrist, and he bleeds out. The revelation of the shop's intentions and Rainbird's betrayal are the same from book to movie. What happens after Andy gives Charlie his last dying order of burn them all in true Mad King fashion is a lot more fun in the book, but still just as glorious in the movie. Charlie vaporizes bullets. She blasts open the horse stalls so they can escape, but it's for naught, since the overexcited snipers hiding just outside the stables shoots them all dead, and now all bets are off. Charlie lays down creeping flames that race across the grass and light up the snipers. She roasts agents inside their fireproof suits. She makes the electrified security fence melt. Terrified guard dogs escape and tear up fleeing shop agents. Charlie blows up a limousine with an escaping shop agent inside. She boils and vaporizes a small pond. Anyone running toward her for any reason explodes into flames. The book doesn't describe any of these huge fireballs that manifest in front of her and jet directly to their target, but they were amazing visuals that worked very well with the carnage. The movie ends with Charlie making her way back to the Manders farm, and Irv taking her to the newspaper office to tell her story. It's not so final in the book. The government told the media that the fire and the explosions were the act of terrorists. And as Charlie made her way back to the Manders farm and lived with them in hiding for a while, the surviving shadow government agents track her down there and threaten the Manders with repercussions that would ruin the lives of their entire families all across the nation, even going all the way back to their old country of origin from several generations prior, behind the Iron Curtain. And that is when Charlie decides to go to the media and tell her story. Now, I got enough information about the remake to detail what is not in the book. First off, nothing about Charlie ever having been in school and dealing with bullies. Second, Andy is, in the book and original movie, a teacher. And in the remake, he capitalizes on his Jedi mind trick working as some kind of therapist. Third, no cats were harmed in the book or the original. So why they went there in the remake, I'm not even going to ask. And finally, at the end of the story, in the book and the original, John Rainbird is dead, gone forever. In the remake, he and Charlie ride off into the sunset forever, presumably to fulfill, excuse me, to fulfill his villain and sidekick dream. And that completes Firestarter. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a leave a comment and slap that like button. And I'll see you back next week for 7.